The social worker had a pen behind her ear and kind eyes that had learned not to flinch. Her name was printed on a laminated badge clipped to her lanyard, Diane Osei, patient advocate, and she sat across from me in a room that smelled like recycled air and industrial cleaner, the kind of room hospitals keep tucked away from the wards so that hard conversations have somewhere to land. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a single page. At the top, in bold letters that had no business being that neat, were the words, "Traumatic brain injury, long-term prognosis report." Below that, my daughter's name. Amara, 8 years old, 3rd grade, missing her 2 front teeth, obsessed with seahorses for reasons she explained every single night at dinner with the focused authority of a scientist presenting a thesis. Amara, who had been crossing the parking lot of her after-school program 6 days ago when a driver ran a stop sign. Diane explained the injury quietly, carefully, with the patience of someone who had said these words before and understood that the person hearing them needed time to find the floor. I tried to hold on to the important parts. Diffuse axonal injury, extended recovery timeline, occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. We are cautiously optimistic. I tried to store sentences like emergency rations. I tried not to imagine my daughter's voice going quiet the way the brain scans suggested it might. James sat beside me. My husband of 9 years. The man I had built every future inside. The man whose face I had searched every time something frightened me. The way you search a compass when you are lost. He was texting, not frantically. The way parents text when they are coordinating childcare or alerting family or trying to hold things together with their phone. He was texting with the quiet, deliberate focus of someone having a conversation they wanted to finish. He did not look up when Diane said long-term. He did not look up when she said significant lifestyle adjustment. He looked up once, when she said the words financial planning, and even then it was only to frown at something behind her, like the wall had said something mildly inconvenient. I noticed all of this the way you notice a small crack in a ceiling. You know it is there. You file it away. You tell yourself it is structural, normal, harmless. You keep looking at it until it is not. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. If you have a second, drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from and what time it is there. It means more than you know. Let me tell you about James Whitfield before I tell you what he did. He was handsome in the way that earns trust before it's deserved. Tall, lean, with the easy confidence of a man who had never been told no by a room. He worked in commercial real estate development, which meant he spent his days convincing people that empty lots were futures waiting to be built. He was very good at it. We met at a friend's rooftop. Dinner in the summer I turned 31. He brought wine, no. One had asked him to bring and spent an hour, talking to my friend's elderly father about jazz, because the old man looked lonely and James noticed. I thought, here is a man who pays attention. I was right. He did pay attention, just not always to me. We married 2 years later. Amara came a year after that, early and small and ferocious, the kind of baby who arrives like a declaration. I took 8 months of maternity leave and then returned to my work as a structural engineer at a mid-sized firm in Atlanta. I designed load-bearing systems for buildings that had to hold weight no one could see coming. I was good at it. I understood invisible pressure. What I should have understood sooner was that invisible pressure had been building inside my marriage for years. James traveled constantly. That was normal, expected, part of what his work required. What was less normal, what I had been cataloging without admitting I was cataloging it, was the way he came home emptier than he left. Not tired, empty. Like the James who returned from a trip was a copy of the James who had departed. Close enough to pass inspection, missing something I could not name. When Amara was born, I thought it would change him. When she said her first word, light, she said, pointing at a lamp, completely delighted by herself, I thought I saw it change him. When she lost her first tooth and presented it to him on a piece of paper towel like a scientist delivering evidence, he laughed with his whole face. Those moments existed. I want to be honest about that, but the thread between those moments got longer over the years, and I got used to the distance between them, the way you get used to a drawer that sticks and stop noticing that it was not always like that. My mother, Celestine, noticed before I did. She lived 40 minutes south of us in the house where I grew up. a wide-porched craftsman she and my father had bought in 1979 and filled with books, herbs, and strong opinions. She had been a high school principal for 22 years. She had spent 2 decades watching people perform competence while quietly failing, and she had developed an eye for the gap between them. She never said anything directly. My mother was not a woman who spoke without precision, but twice in the year before the accident, she had taken my hand at the kitchen table and said, "You are carrying more than your share, baby." And once, when James canceled Amara's birthday dinner at the last minute because of a client conflict, my mother simply looked at the door he had just walked back out of and said, quietly to herself, "A man will always find time for what he wants." I filed that away, too. The first week after Amara's accident was a blur of waiting rooms and fluorescent lights and the particular silence of a pediatric ICU, which is not actually silent at all, but filled with the sounds of machines doing what bodies are supposed to do on their own. I did not leave the hospital. James did. 3 times. The first time, he said he had to handle something at the office. 48 hours after our daughter's brain had been through trauma serious enough to alter her future, he needed to handle something at the office. I told myself he copes differently. He cannot sit still with fear. He is not abandoning us. He is managing. The second time, he was gone overnight. He said there was a development deal in Charlotte he could not lose. He said the timing was terrible. He said, "You have your mom here, Adiz. You're not alone." I looked at him across the hallway, near the sanitizing dispenser outside the neuro unit, and I thought, I have always been alone. I just did not know what that felt like yet. The third time he left, I didn't ask where he was going. My mother watched him go from across the family waiting area. Then she came and sat beside me and did not say a word. She just opened her large canvas bag, produced a thermos of the ginger tea she had been making since I was 4 years old, and poured me a cup. When I reached for it, she held my hand for a moment. That was when I cried for the first time since the accident. Not because of Amara, not because of James, because my mother's hand was warm and constant and had never, in my entire life, reached for mine and then pulled back. Amara moved out of the ICU on day 11. It was a small victory. Her eyes were open more often. She recognized me. She recognized my mother. She had not yet spoken beyond single sounds, but her occupational therapist, a brisk and brilliant woman named Dr. Femi Alade, said the sounds were purposeful. "She's working," Dr. Alade told me. "She is absolutely working." I went home that night for the first time in almost 2 weeks. Not because I wanted to, because my mother physically drove me there and stood in the kitchen making jollof rice while I showered, a thing I had not done without sitting down halfway through in 11 days. James was home. He was on the phone in the study, speaking quietly. He did not hear me come in. I was not listening. I want to be clear about that. I was not standing outside the door with my ear against the wood. I was walking past to get to the bedroom, and his voice came through the gap in the way voices do when someone believes they have privacy. "She's not going to be able to keep up the way things are. The kid is going to need constant care. We're talking years." I stopped. "No, I haven't said anything yet. I'm trying to figure out the right time." My hand found the wall. "The development in Savannah has to close by Q3. If I am tied to whatever this situation becomes, look, I'm just saying I need to be realistic about capacity. This situation." I walked to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at my hands for a long time. Then I went back downstairs, told my mother I needed air, and stood in the backyard in the dark until I could breathe like a person again. The following morning, James found me at the kitchen table with coffee. He sat across from me. He had the particular expression he wore when he was about to say something he had been rehearsing. Careful, positioned, the look of a man who had planned the conversation but was pretending he had not. "Ada," he said, "I think we need to talk about what the next few years are going to look like." I said nothing. "Amara's recovery is going to be long." Dr. Alade said that. "The school situation, the therapies, the appointments, you're going to need to probably step back from work. Or significantly reduce. We'll need to restructure everything." "We," I said. "Of course we. But realistically, are you leaving?" He paused. A very small pause, the kind that contains an entire answer. "I think we need to consider a separation." There it was. Not "I am terrified and I don't know how to help." Not "I am not the man I wanted to be and I am ashamed." Just a separation. Neat, clinical, delivered with the same calibrated tone he used in pitch meetings when he was presenting a scenario he had already decided on. "Our daughter is in a rehabilitation unit," I said. "I know. She is 8. Ada, she asked for you yesterday." She made a sound, and Dr. Alade and I figured out together that it was your name. "And you were in Charlotte." His jaw moved. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "None of this is." He left 3 days later. He did not say where he was going. He packed 2 bags, put his laptop under his arm, and told me he would be in touch about next steps. He kissed Amara on the forehead at the hospital, and she tracked his face with her eyes when he moved away, which the therapist said was positive neurological progress and which broke my heart in a way I had to hide until I got to my car. He walked out of the hospital the same way he walked out of rooms that bored him, like he had somewhere better to be. Here's what James Whitfield did not know about Adesi Celestino Koye before she became Adesi Whitfield. He knew I was a structural engineer. He knew I made good money. He knew I kept a tidy spreadsheet of household finances that he had never once looked at, because he considered financial management beneath him and considered my management of it a kind of domestic service, invisible and expected the way electricity is invisible and expected until you try to leave and discover the house still runs without you. What he did not know was what my father had left me. My father, Emmanuel Okoye, had been a quiet man with large hands and a genius for numbers that he never bragged about. He had emigrated from Enugu in 1974 with nothing he would describe and built, over 30 years, a small network of commercial laundries across Atlanta and its suburbs. He did not advertise this. He did not host parties. He drove a reliable, unremarkable sedan and wore the same style of work shirt in 3 colors and told me, when I was 12, that the point of money was options, not exhibition. He died when I was 26. 2 years before I met James. I was his only child. He left everything to me in a trust structured by a meticulous estate attorney named Barrington Cole, who had also been my father's chess partner and who did not believe in loose ends. The trust was protected, documented, separate. It included the laundry portfolio, by then managed by a small property firm and generating consistent income, 2 commercial properties in Decatur, and a financial account that I had grown through disciplined, quiet investment because I was my father's daughter and my father believed compound interest was a kind of loyalty. I had never told James the full scope of it, not because I was hiding it, because he had never asked. He had seen the house, the car, my salary, and constructed a story about our finances that centered him. I had not corrected the story because it never occurred to me that he was building plans inside it. 3 days after he left, I called Barrington Cole. He picked up on the second ring. He had been expecting my call, he said, because my mother had called him first. Of course she had. "Adesa," he said, "your father was very specific about one thing. He said, if that girl ever faces a storm, make sure she knows she has a roof." I sat in the hospital parking lot and cried until I laughed. Then I called my mother. "How long have you been waiting to do this?" I asked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, since the birthday dinner he canceled. James's attorney sent a discovery request 10 days after he moved into what I later learned was a short-term rental in Buckhead, the kind of place that looks like a hotel lobby and costs more per month than my father's first laundry machine. The request was aggressive. It asked for full disclosure of income, assets, business interests. It asked for a forensic accounting of the household finances. It used words like concealment and disproportionate control and undisclosed interests. Barrington Cole read it at his desk and then called me. "He's fishing," he said. "But let's give him the whole ocean." The response we filed included everything. The trust documents, the commercial property portfolio, the investment accounts, the laundry business revenue, still operating, still quiet, still reliable. The total, when Barrington's associate compiled it, was a number I had never looked at directly because my father had taught me to look at cash flow, not total value. I looked at it directly now. $7.4 million. Not counting the income-generating properties. James received the disclosure on a Tuesday. His attorney called Barrington within the hour. I was at the hospital with Amara when Barrington forwarded me the message. He wrote only, "They've gone very quiet." I put my phone away and helped Amara work through her grip exercises. She was getting stronger. Her left hand, which had been the concern, was catching up. She squeezed my fingers with something that felt, for the first time, like intention. "Good," I said. She made a sound. Her therapist had started calling them approximations. Not quite words yet, but heading there. This one, I was almost certain, was again, so we did it again. The call came on a Thursday evening from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer. Her name was Simone. She had a soft voice and was clearly scared of something. Possibly me, possibly herself. She said she had gotten my number from a friend of a friend, and that she was sorry to intrude and she understood if I hung up. I did not hang up. She had been seeing James for 7 months. She had not known he was married. She had not known about Amara. She had known he had a wife in the vague, abstract way people sometimes know things they are not meant to examine closely. He had said they were essentially separated, that the marriage had been over for a long time, that he was only staying for practical reasons. She had believed him. He is very convincing, she said. You know that? I did know that. She had ended things 2 weeks earlier, she said after overhearing him on a call. She would not tell me exactly what he said, but she said it was about Amara, and it made her sick to her stomach, and she had not been able to sleep since. I asked her gently to tell me anyway. She was quiet for a moment. Then, he said the kid was going to be a problem for years, and he had not signed up for a dependent with disabilities. He said it was unfortunate, but he had to think about his own future. The phone in my hand felt very cold. Simone, I said, do you have anything in writing? Texts, emails, anything where he described the marriage, described Amara, made representations about his situation? She said yes. I gave her Barrington Cole's number. It was almost 3 weeks after he left when I heard a car in the driveway at 11:30 at night. I was in the kitchen going over Amara's therapy notes. My mother was asleep upstairs. I looked through the window and saw James's car. He did not ring the doorbell. He used his key. It still worked. I had not changed the locks because I was managing a child in a rehabilitation facility and had not yet had the specific bandwidth for that particular task. I added it to the list. He came into the kitchen and stopped when he saw me. Ada. James. He looked worse than I expected. Not disheveled, James was never disheveled. But there was something worn at the edges of him. His confidence had developed a small tremor. I want to talk. It's nearly midnight. I know. I couldn't sleep. He sat down without being invited. An old habit. He had always moved through spaces like they were his by default. I heard from Daniel. Our attorneys. I know who Daniel is. The financials. He stopped. Ada, why didn't you tell me? I looked at him. You never asked. That's not a reasonable answer. You built a marriage inside an assumption you never tested. That is not my responsibility. His hands were flat on the table. I thought we were struggling. I thought, if things with Amara are going to be as serious as the doctors are saying, I thought we were looking at financial ruin. And that was your calculation point. Financial ruin. I was scared. Our daughter was in the ICU. I know. He rubbed his face. I know. I panicked. You panicked into a lease in Buckhead and a relationship with a woman you told we were separated. He went very still. Simone called me. I said. The kitchen was quiet for a long time. I made a mistake, he said finally. More than one. Yes, I want to come back. I want to be here for Amara's recovery. His voice did something unfamiliar. It cracked. I want to try to be the person I should have been. I looked at the man who had sat beside me in that hospital room while Diane O.C. explained our daughter's injury and had spent the time answering a text. I looked at the man who had said this situation and left for Charlotte and used the word capacity when he meant love. James, I said, do you remember what you said in the development meeting 3 weeks ago? The one Simone overheard? He said nothing. You said Amara was going to be a problem for years. I kept my voice steady. It was not hard. Something in me had gone still a long time before this moment. I just had not known what to call it. You said you had not signed up for a dependent with disabilities. His eyes closed. That sentence, I said, is who you are when you think no one is watching. Ada. I'm not angry anymore, James. I want you to hear that. I am not standing here wanting you to suffer. But I am also not standing here with the door open. He looked at me with wet eyes. I recognized the look. It was the same expression he had used in pitches when the client was about to say no. Soft, sincere, the implication of vulnerability deployed with architectural precision. "Tell me what I can do," he said. "Get a good attorney. Show up for your daughter's appointments. Pay what you owe. Become someone Amara can trust. And us?" "There is no us," I said. "There is only Amara and what we build around her going forward." He left at midnight. I locked the door behind him and sat back down at the kitchen table with the therapy notes. Then I went upstairs and knocked quietly on my mother's door. She was awake. She had been awake the whole time. She opened her arms and I sat beside her and she said nothing for a while and then, "Your father would have known." "Known what?" "That you were going to be fine." I laughed. It sounded like something that had been held too long under pressure finally being released. "He left me a roof, Mama." "He left you more than a roof." She smoothed my hair back the way she had when I was 7. "He left you the knowledge that you built it." The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday in late February in a courthouse downtown that had good light and bad parking. Barrington did not represent me in family court. That was outside his specialty. But he had referred me to an attorney named Vivian Marsh, who wore reading glasses on a chain and had the particular energy of a woman who had stopped tolerating nonsense sometime in her 40s and had not looked back. James's attorney tried 3 different arguments. First, that I had concealed marital assets and he had made decisions based on incomplete financial information. Vivian pointed out calmly that James had never once asked about my finances in 9 years of marriage and that ignorance deployed as a strategy was not a legal remedy. Second, that the stress of Amara's accident had impaired his judgment and that his actions should be understood in that context. Vivian produced Simone's documented testimony, including the messages in which James had described the marriage as essentially over 5 months before the accident. Third, that his contributions to our lifestyle, his income, his travel, his professional network, had indirectly supported my ability to preserve and grow my separate assets. The judge, a small, precise woman named Judge Elaine Tarkington, who looked like she had personally cross-examined several centuries of marital law, asked James's attorney to explain how a man who was unaware of his wife's assets could simultaneously claim credit for maintaining them. James's attorney did not have a good answer for that. The ruling confirmed my separate property in full. No spousal support was awarded in either direction. James was ordered to meet a defined schedule for Amara's therapeutic expenses and was granted parental involvement on the condition of demonstrated presence and consistency. A requirement? Judge Tarkington noted that the record suggested he would need to work to establish. In the hallway afterward, James found me near the elevator. He looked like a building that had lost its scaffolding, the frame still standing, the supports visibly gone. "Ada," he said. I waited. "I heard from the Charlotte developers. They went with another firm." "I'm sorry," I said. "I meant it partially. The Buckhead place ends next month." "I'm looking at options." I nodded. "Simone won't take my calls." "That's between you and Simone." He put his hands in his pockets. "I keep thinking about the night Amara was admitted. The first night. Do you remember what you said to her?" I did remember. I had leaned over the bed rail and told her, "You are in there and I can feel you. Stay." "I was standing outside the unit," James said. "I heard you through the door. I told myself I needed to go to the office to manage things, because managing things is what I do, and I did not know what else to do, and I was so—" He stopped. "I was so afraid." "I know," I said. "But I left anyway." "Yes. That's the thing I can't get past." His voice was very quiet. "Not the money, not the attorney, not any of it. I left anyway." I looked at him for a long time. "That's the beginning of something," I said. "If you mean it. That's where you start." He nodded once. Not hope exactly. More like a man picking up something heavy and understanding for the first time exactly how heavy it is. I took the elevator down. Vivian was waiting on the front steps with coffee. She handed me a cup without a word. The February air was cold and sharp, and felt against my face like something beginning. Amara said her first full sentence on a Friday afternoon in March. She said, "I want the seahorse book." Dr. Alade cried. The occupational therapist cried. My mother, who had driven 40 minutes in traffic to be there, made a sound I had never heard her make before, something between a laugh and a prayer. I held my daughter's hand and told her the seahorse book was right there, had always been right there, right on the windowsill beside her bed. She looked at it and then at me with the focused, satisfied expression of a scientist confirming a hypothesis. That evening, I sat in the hospital cafeteria with a cup of terrible coffee and called Barrington Cole. I had been thinking for weeks about what my father had built and what I wanted to build with it. What if, I said, we use some of the portfolio income to fund a support network? For families of children with acquired brain injuries, specifically for single parents or parents in the process of separation who are navigating the legal and therapeutic systems at the same time. Barrington was quiet for a moment. Then, your father once told me that money sitting still is money. Wasted. That sounds like him. He also said the only inheritance worth leaving is one that keeps working after you're gone. I looked out the cafeteria window at the parking lot, where a woman was sitting on a curb with her head in her hands, and a man was crouched beside her with his hand on her back, and they were both crying in the open. Unashamed way people cry when they have been awake for too long and are too tired to hide it. I thought, I know what that parking lot feels like from the inside. The Emmanuel Okoye Family Resource Center opened 6 months later in a renovated suite near the rehabilitation hospital. We offered care coordination, legal referrals, emergency financial grants for therapy, copays, and transportation, and a small library of resources my father would have called practical, and I called necessary. I did not name it after myself. I named it after the man who had driven an unremarkable sedan and worn his shirts in 3 colors and believed, quietly and without exhibition, that the point of building anything is to make it hold. Amara walked into her 4th grade classroom on a Tuesday in September. Not alone. With a support plan, a classroom aide, and a backpack with a seahorse embroidered on the front that she had selected herself with the decisive authority of someone who knows exactly what they want. I stood at the classroom door until she turned and waved me off with a gesture that was entirely her. Impatient, affectionate, the wave of someone with places to be. I walked back to my car through the school parking lot and sat for a moment with the engine off. James had attended 6 of Amara's last 8 therapy appointments. He had shown up on time. He had asked the right questions and taken notes on his phone and not once looked like he was calculating anything. It was not redemption. It was not reconciliation. It was a father learning, slowly and imperfectly, to be present for someone who needed presence more than she needed perfection. I had stopped watching his face for the old signs. That was its own kind of freedom. My phone buzzed. My mother, sending a photo of the jollof rice she was making for dinner. Then a message, bring the child. She needs real food after the first day. I laughed and put the car in reverse. There are things that survive a marriage ending, and things that do not, and the difference between them has nothing to do with what the marriage contained. It has to do with what you contained before the marriage began. My father built laundries. He drove a sensible car. He left me a trust I never mentioned because I was not raised to use money as a measuring stick for love. What he was actually leaving me, I understood now, was not the money. It was the lesson under the money, that a woman who knows what she is worth does not spend her life trying to convince someone else to know it too. James had left because he thought I was diminished. He had not stayed long enough to see what diminished looks like when it decides to stand up. I drove out of the parking lot into a September morning that was bright and indifferent and entirely mine. In the rearview mirror, the school got smaller, and Amara was inside it, somewhere, already learning something new. I kept driving. Some losses clear the ground. And on clear ground, you can finally see what was always yours to build. Claude Fable 5 is Curie.